welcome to an Everyday Canines video. This is episode 2 in the Everything Weave series. And in this episode we're looking at moving on your basic weave skills. So we did a little bit of work in the last video, just getting our dog used to moving forward through with poles. Now we're going to move it on. Now if you've ever seen the 2x2 method, you'll know the next stage I'm going to be doing. This is my poles as they are now. They're set straight. So basically they're like two upright pillars the dog's going through. Now what I'm going to do is start to twist it. Okay, they're twisting left to right if you want. So think, if you imagine this is the centre of a clock and this is the arm, they're going anti-clockwise because we're encouraging left-hand behaviour. Imagine this is the entry. Our dog goes in on the left, so we're encouraging left-hand entry behaviour. And what we're going to do is we're going to set them not greatly, but they're going to now be set at a slight diagonal. And we're going to get our dog, and we're doing similar to what we previously did. Oops, sweeties are here. And we're going to want our dog to run through them. So because now we're having more distance ahead, I'm going to move on to be having the reward in a treat ball. Now you can do this with a toy. I was doing it with food initially. You can do this with a toy. Absolutely, you can do this with a toy. Why am I not using a manners minder out there? Because that becomes a lure, and I want my dogs to be doing this independently without the need for a lure. It's also worthwhile remembering that you're going to try and throw as best you can straight across, not over here, not over there, because we want our dog powering straight through. And we're going to be throwing over the dog's head, and the aim being that they move forward, waiting for the reward to drop. So my goal is not to lure my dog. My goal is that my dog just wants to do this, because when you have to, she did it, so I rewarded. When you have to keep, if you have to keep putting a lure down, that's something you've then got to remove. Whereas this way, I've got the reward in my hand, I can be as far as I need to be, ready to throw, and as soon as she's okay, and I throw. And look, she's facing forward. The toy's going to land ahead of her, she's facing forward. For Magpie, very little has changed in this setup. Okay. Very little has changed. She's still running through two pillars, if you like. I've done this on this side, I've got to move to the other side. Always work both your sides. People get very fixated on working one side, and then the dog can only do one side weaves. I should change hands for my throw toy. Okay. So yeah, people tend to, you see a lot of people with great left hand weaves, they can't do right hand weaves. There should be no difference for the dog. To us, yes, it can look different because the dog has to wrap a pole when it comes in from the right. So when it comes to the right, it has to wrap the pole. Whereas the left, it just goes in. But with most straight entries, it's not actually that big a deal because the dog is already there. They're still doing what they're meant to be doing. It's only when it gets to more complicated entries. So at this stage, it shouldn't matter. The dog should be able to do it both sides. Okay. She heard one of my other dogs. There you go. I want her to choose. I want her to choose to do these. So I'm not telling her to do. The only reason I'm saying okay is because I want her to know she's not having to wait for me. And that's what I want her to do. I want her to look and go, what can I do that will get me that reward? And the toy throughout, and that's it. Okay, so she's doing this fine. I'm going to move them to the slightly straighter angle. So still got this straight line running through, and it's still at an angle. I would say if you measure it on a clock, it's probably about 2 o'clock now on a clock. That's noon, 1, 2, maybe slightly between 1 and 2 on a clock. This is something you would build across several sessions, and these would be very brief sessions. So Magpie's doing a lot because we're demoing, but these would be very short sessions, no more than 5 minutes. Okay. Good girl. And I want her going out there and picking that entry. Good girl. Now I'm not rewarding the way back this time anymore. Though technically, if she comes in on the left, it is still the correct entry, but I don't need to do that now. I don't need to keep rewarding the back and forth. We're rewarding forward drive behaviour. Okay. Good girl. And again, I want to see her going through. Change sides. If I throw sooner, I should get a bit more speed. So I'm going to just go back a little bit more. Got a couple of meters between me and it, so I'm getting her to drive in and find that entry. So it's all learning at this moment in time. Good girl. She's all learning. So I'm playing with the angle, I'm playing with the distance back I am, and throwing in the toy. So it's all for her. She's still, you can see, she's still learning. So we're not fast yet because we're learning. So while we're still got it at this stage, I'm going to add in a bit more distance. So she's really having to find that entry and see what she'll do. Okay. Good girl. I want her to really be pushing out and finding that entry while it's still really easy. Good girl, good girl. Because the next stage is obviously going to be twisting it to be straight. So now this is pretty much a straight angle. So now she really has got to bend to get around those weaves. This is where it becomes important to think of where you're putting your reward. You want your reward to fall here because at some point she's going to have to learn to bend back. And if you keep rewarding her out here, you're encouraging too much of a drive. If you do this in enough simple progressions, generally the dogs pick it up without too much problem. It's when you rush the progressions. So I'm going to be a bit closer again, take away that distance as a challenge. And oh look, perfect. Good girl. So as I say, it's when you start moving things on. If you move things too fast, that's when you notice they make mistakes. When you take things in gradual progressions, they might make the odd learning mistake, but in general, it's not so bad. Now she's looking a bit more because the setup has changed, but notice she's always picking the correct side of the weave poles, and that is really important. So now I've done a bit of distance, I'm going to be over here a bit more. Okay, she's getting a bit tired now. Okay. And still throwing in. So if you've done 2x2s and you've seen the Susan Garrett's video, this is the point where you can start working around the clock, they say, and that's to help with your entries. So you imagine you're stood here, it's a pretty straight entry. If I now take a step here, can she still do the entry? Okay, good girl. She can, that's fine. What if I'm here? Good girl. You see, because she's got so much proofing done on this, it's not difficult for her. She knows her job. What if I'm stood here? We made a mistake. Okay, come here. Good girl. So that was interesting. So that just threw her a little bit. So we're going to repeat that. Good girl, no problem that time. Do you notice that when I'm here, I am throwing the toy that way, so she is actually already having to bend back for the next pole. Same with this side. I always think right side entries tend to be easier than left hand entries when you get to this stage. Well, because the right hand, you've got a pole to think about. They've got a pole, they've got to think about wrapping. But when you're on the left, you don't have that. Good girl. And it can be quite hard for dogs, even experienced dogs, to find that correct entry on the left. So you can see I'm working around the different angles, seeing what she can do. Can she still find it when I'm different angles? We've really only had one little tiny mistake. The other thing we're going to do again is put in distance. And what I'm going to be doing is not just distance backwards. Okay? It's not just distance backwards. It's also going to be lateral distance. So I can start moving around to different points. What happens if I'm over here? Okay. Okay. So yeah, so we're talking about lateral distance. We're adding in all the variables we can think of that we might find with weave poles when we're actually on a course. And that's the stage we're going to work for a while. You're going to work, you can work this stage for quite a while actually. This is the stage I quite like to focus on for a considerable bit because it is the stage that's so important, the entries. How many dogs can't get their entries? But if you can get this nailed, then what comes next actually starts to become straightforward. So spend a little bit of time with this, test all different scenarios, see what your dog can do. You could even add a jump on low and have them doing a jump into those entries. No reason why not to do that. So you could have a tunnel, do everything you can think of with just 2 poles and see if they can still find their entry, because the collection for the entry is so important, and it's the piece of the puzzle that so many people forget. They go, I want my dog running really fast through weaves, but if they can't collect and get their entries, then you can't get any further forward. Okay, so that's what you're going to do with these. Have lots of fun with it. Remember, keep it short and fun for your dog. Do not overdo these. 2 sessions a week is plenty, and keep them short sessions because we don't want to put too much strain on our doggies. Yeah? I hope you've enjoyed this Everyday Canines video, and if you have, you might like to subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also check us out on Facebook and Instagram, and I hope to see you all again very, very soon.